Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, today let's talk about um, the org chart, the organizational chart. A lot of times, as it relates to becoming lean and reducing waste, you've got to do both of those things in concert, right? You can't just eliminate waste and go, okay, we've eliminated some waste, we're good. Right? Because typically you're probably not fully eliminating the to the max extent possible, and it's never going to be a perfect thing. It's going to always be an ongoing process to eliminate waste. But to become lean is to become more efficient, right? More effective, right? So I'm doing the job as efficiently and as effectively as possible. I got great productivity, I got great quality, things are cranking along just amazingly, right? My waste is low, very, very, very low. But here's a struggle that organizations run into. So, an organization that wants to become more lean after years, maybe decades or more, of not being, maybe being a little bit wasteful, and I'm being kind, right? Being a lot more than a little bit wasteful, um, not lean. After having, you know, many, say many years or decades of operating in this way, they decide all at once that they want to become lean. So one of the first things they do is they lean out their org chart. So if you think of the org chart of the 1950s, right, and or say after World War II in the United States, people were working, and companies had really fat um, org charts. The org chart looked like a giant pyramid, right, with the executive, chief executive at the top, and then a myriad of you know hundreds or thousands, depending on how big the organization was, of people that scattered that triangle. Anyone in that triangle could be 50 or 60% effective, and probably that was probably high, and they would be okay because there was always somebody above them or below them or somewhere in that chain that was probably going to catch a mistake or fix a thing, which is what kind of fed into the whole idea of waste, right? Finding ways to reduce waste. And then, of course, to become lean. But the difficulty is these days is that organizations who decide to become lean like that, just in a snap, is they want to flatten their org chart. The difficulty is that for your org chart to be flat, right? So that means you have fewer department heads. You have, you're lean. You have the people that you need, not more than you need, and so forth, right? And you may have some crossover in in standards, right? Because you need to have your standards documented and your systems, your policies, processes, and procedures documented out well, because you may need some redundancy if somebody's out sick and these things, right? But they want to lean out their organization, so they flatten out their org chart. Well, the problem is, and this is a delicate and difficult problem, is that if the individuals in that org chart now, those department heads and so forth, whether it be functionals and others, are not 90% or better in their ability to be competent, right? Their ability to do the work and do it well, right? They can't be now 50 or 60% competent like maybe back in the days of, decades and decades ago, right? For an org chart to be flat, to have a flat org chart, flatter, right? It's not perfectly flat. To have a flatter org chart means that you have to have a higher competency. The basics have to be there. You have to have people who are not only, show up to work when they say, all the basics have to be there. But then above the basics too, right? Individuals have to be bringing their A game as, as a norm, right, to the organization. Now, it's very difficult. How do you know somebody's bringing their A or their B game? Well, there is a way to tell. And not necessarily individually, although it can be done, but as an organization. How effective are you? What's your on-time delivery? What's your retention rate of the general population of your team, right? Do you have a high retention rate? What is your waste? Um, what's your waste levels look like, right? So you combine all these things and you find out how efficient and effective you are. And that is what's telling you your competency as an organization. Okay. Now, if you go do the research like I have, and granted, things are changing, right? Everything's in flux. But for the most part, you're seeing a range between 65 and 77 ish. There's always going to be exceptions, but for the most part, that's the band that you're going to see most, you know, um, the efficiency and effectiveness of most organizations. Not all, there's always exceptions, right? But keep in mind, too, for those who have really great numbers, except potentially the turnover numbers, the retention numbers, if you're looking at all of those things together, how many more people do they have in their organization, right? That org chart isn't flat now. Now, keeping this in mind too is if you are bringing people in and you're having to train them and develop them within your program, there's going to be a certain amount of waste in that process, right? But let's not call that waste. We'll call that an investment, right? You're investing in these people. And if that's a long-term investment, well, then be committed to that long-term investment. But what you see happen is organizations that don't make that investment. So their org chart from a leadership perspective might be flat, but their competence level at the team level is not, 90 percentile because they're not hiring skilled workers. They might be hiring more unskilled workers and then trying to do OJT. That's where the waste comes in. The waste is going to be higher where you don't have a formal development program within your organization, right? If you're not formally developing all your team members, then you have an inherent waste element to your organization. And there's a way to overcome it. Well, you can develop one in-house, right? And some do over time, and some can grow their grassroots development programs, and they can make them into some really neat programs. And then some will buy off-the-shelf, I will say off-the-shelf, but some programs that they can do off-the-shelf. But again, there's an outside investment. So you're really just, it's a trade-off for the waste that you had before, right? So you're never going to get away from it. Either you're hiring a turnkey employee or team member, or you're developing them. That's the only two routes you go. But if you choose to go lean and you don't make a decision to do either, then you are going to have an implosion of waste, massive amounts of waste. Retention rates suffering, your on-time delivery is probably suffering, and so on down the line with all of your key performance indicators. So take heed before you continue and grow your organization. Make the decision. Are you going to formally develop and create your own development program in-house, or are you going to try to do it off the shelf? Or, I should say, are you going to look for those turnkey employees who are already bringing skills that you need to the table? You need to pick one. If you don't pick one of the two, then you're going to be inheriting waste as your program develops. And you're going to be building, literally building your castle on sand. And that is not a good thing, okay? All right, folks, talking a little bit about the org chart and having the continuity, but having the capabilities and competencies that go along with having a lean org chart means you're going to have to choose to develop and train your employees, right? Or you're going to have to hire turnkey employees. If you choose to do neither, you're going to suffer inherent waste, inefficiency, and all kinds of other significant negative factors. All right, folks, that's it for today. Remember, push that good domino 3 to 5 times a day or more to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage folks. And when you do that, not only are we transforming culture, we're transforming ourselves, and that's an amazing thing. All right, folks. Well, that's it for now. Until next time, hit like, share, and subscribe. We'll talk to you later.